Strength Show.
Hello everybody, this is the second episode of the Balkan Strength Show. I'm your host Orda, and beside me is Jovan, your co-host.
Hello.
Today we will talk about the raw bench press, and we will cover several bench press strength profiles of bench press lifters. So what is the raw bench press from a strength perspective? Can you talk about...
Well, first of all, we should say that this is the most popular lift, and everyone that goes to the gym, and if you go to the gym and someone sees you, that's the first question that they ask you. It's how much you bench, even though from a sport perspective it might be the most useless measurement in my opinion, because basically everything starts from the ground. If you have a big squat and deadlift and press and then bench, I would put it on the fourth place in my opinion.
You talk about it from a athletic perspective.
Yes, from athletic perspective or strength measurement in my opinion. If you put two guys head to head, the one who is stronger squatter and deadlifter, I believe will dominate on strengths. Like
in most strength sports or sports that require a certain level of strength, yes, explosiveness.
In explosiveness, in American football, in martial arts, in
American football guys do a lot of bench pressing, but they also do a lot of clean and pressing, and
yes,
they're very strong at the push press.
But also from a lot of players that I've watched, and the strongest, the linebackers and all of that, they were the biggest squatters and deadlifters.
Yes, they put a lot of emphasis on the lower body lifts, because if you're strong, if you have super strong lower body, you will basically be an explosive athlete. You will gain a lot of power from it.
Yes.
And that will translate to the field.
However, still it's the most popular lift.
Gym lift,
yes, of all. And
it's a power lift.
Today we'll do a brief history on it and on the current records that are held, and
some very impressive bench pressing feats, maybe some story and stuff like that. So the bench press basically is a new lift if you think about it. The bench press that we know nowadays started in the mid-30s. Before that, people would floor press, and it wasn't a very popular exercise because they focused mainly on overhead pressing, and overhead pressing was a part of the weightlifting in Olympics. It was the press, the snatch, and the clean and jerk.
It had three disciplines at the beginning.
Yeah, at the beginning it had three disciplines. It was that was until the mid 20th century, when the press was eliminated from the weightlifting in the Olympics.
Why was eliminated?
Because athletes would cheat a lot on it, and it was hard to judge. It was really hard to judge. If you take a look at the last competitions where the press was judged, you would see a lot of push presses in a way. So it wasn't a strict press. Lifters were using their legs a lot. They would unlock their knees. They would lean back so much that it would be basically a push incline press in a way.
Yes, I've seen it.
Yeah. Despite that, it was very serious poundages, and it was still impressive, but it differed from the original intent of the standing press, which would mean locked knees without excessive back lean and strict pressing overhead. So, as I said, before the 1930s, they would do floor press, and not very often. The guy that made the floor press more popular was a guy named George Heckenschmidt. He had a very impressive physique, but also he was really strong. He was also a strength inventor because if you are into the strength and bodybuilding world, you probably have heard of the hex squat. The hex squat is named after George Heckenschmidt. So he was a guy that
that's basically behind the back deadlift.
In a way, with
you're standing in front of the barbell.
Yes.
And you're
using your quads quite a lot more. Maybe the guys back in those days used some kind of plate, maybe that they were
to elevate the heels.
Yeah, to elevate the heels, maybe, or something like a wooden block, so that they will have quad emphasis. And that's how basically they started focusing more on the quad muscles.
That's the beginning of the squat as well.
If you think about it, yeah, they used to do a lot different quad exercises, but before the squat, they would do stuff like this. So after that, in the 1930s, as I mentioned, they started incorporating benching off of boxes and stuff like that because it was easier. They still didn't use stands for the bench press. So either somebody or multiple people would lift the barbell if the weight was heavy, and the lifter that was on the boxes would grab it and bench it and return it to the spotter's hands. So that was basically the beginnings of the bench press.
Talk about bro lifting.
Yeah, the beginning of bro lifting. And after a while, it progressed to benching off bench. Yeah, and the lifters that put the bench press on the strength map was, I must mention first, Doug Hepburn. He was a Canadian weightlifter that was a world champion at the time, despite having leg disability from birth, which was super impressive, doing partial squats during a snatch or clean and jerk, even though he did full range of motion squats in his training. In 1953, he became the first man to bench press 500 pounds, which for that time was something unheard of. That is approximately 227 kilos. Just imagine that. In 1953, benching 500 pounds. Another guy that was really impressive.
Was that drug-free at the time?
I would say that's not. I don't know. That's drugs. There wasn't drug testing at the time, and drugs were. Performance-enhancing drugs were available at the time. At their start, yeah.
I know that they were available even in the 40s. Not like some people say, like they began in the 60s. And
yeah,
they were a lot earlier.
Yeah, you could check that. There are a lot of information. There is a lot of information that testosterone, synthetic testosterone, was invented prior to that. It wasn't used. It wasn't widely used as it was later on and nowadays. But certain top-level athletes were like guinea pigs that used performance-enhancing drugs, even though they didn't know what they were injecting or putting in their bodies. They still used and they improved their performance. Was it placebo or a real effect? I believe that even in those times, the scientists know how to make a synthetic version of the testosterone.
Well, they were using, I know Hitler used amphetamines with his soldiers.
And there are researchers that, or strength historians that even say that they may have used some sort of synthetic testosterone.
As well.
Yeah, to make them super soldiers.
So this is the end of the 30s. I believe this is the beginning of the 40s that this happened.
I believe that at the end of the 30s it was available, but only to a few athletes. Only to a few athletes. The majority of them were still natural, in my opinion.
Yes.
That's what I've came across when I was doing some sort of research over the years on.
So it's not like when some people say, steroids are like the end of the 60s and when bodybuilding, Mr. Olympia started, and then
No.
so it's a lot earlier than that.
Yeah, it was much prior to that. So the next lifter that really put the bench press on the map, not only with the lift itself, because Doug Hepburn was an impressive strength athlete, one of the best strength athletes of that era, but he was really heavy, and he didn't really have a physique that would appeal to the majority of people. Unlike Reg Park, who was mainly a bodybuilder, but basically trained like a strength athlete, and
Was he the inventor of 3x5 system or 5x5? How was it?
yeah, because he was training full body and he really liked going to that 5 rep range, which he considered ideal between strength and hypertrophy. And he popularized he made it popular, that system. A year later, after Doug Hepburn, Reg Park benched also 500 pounds. He was the first European to bench 500 pounds, and he did it at a lesser body weight than Doug Hepburn, obviously.
How heavy was he? 100 kilos?
Maybe a bit heavier, because obviously he didn't do that while prepping for a contest. But back in those days, even at a contest level, they still maintained a lot of strength, because bodybuilding competitions in the past also had a lifting competition at the bodybuilding competition. So it was
the day before or after? It was
most of the time it was on the same day.
on the same day.
On the same day, they lifted and they posed. They did these awkward poses, but it was cool. It was basically the start. After a while, it only became a physique contest where they only displayed their physique, because they dieted harder, and at a lower body fat, they realized that they couldn't maintain as much strength.
And it's dangerous to lift dehydrated and
Yes,
at that low
to lift
body
at
fat.
your maximum. Yeah. There is an interesting story about Doug Hepburn and Marvin Eder. He was basically a weightlifter and bodybuilder who showed great potential at an early age. He was mainly a middleweight, so not really a heavy lifter, but he had tremendous pressing abilities. Tremendous. He pressed over 330 pounds at a very young age. I believe he was still a teen.
That's
strict
press.
Yeah, on the standing press, he did that. So that's super impressive, and
That's 150 kilos, something like that.
yeah, 150 kilos. That's super impressive for a middleweight, especially in that era. Even though they focused on the standing press.
Well, back then most of them were all around.
Strong athletes. Yeah, if you trained hard, and you trained your whole body. There wasn't much of fluff and pump stuff like you see nowadays in the gym. They basically did hardcore training, compound movements mainly. Squats, benches, deadlifts, cleans, jerks, push presses, pull-ups, dips. They focused on those lifts, and those lifts gave them 95% of the results, physique-wise and strength-wise. So the story that I wanted to mention is about Marvin Eder and Doug Hepburn. Marvin and Doug met on Muscle Beach, and the record at the time was on the bench press was around 420 pounds. So Marvin Eder managed to bench 400 pounds for reps on that day. Doug Hepburn repeated that, and later on they put 420 pounds on the bar, which was the record at that time. Marvin Eder, I believe he did 2 reps with it. Doug Hepburn matched that. Later on, Marvin Eder did 430 pounds, which was 10 pounds above the record.
Did they count that, or it's like unofficial?
No, it was unofficial because it wasn't in a strength competition of some sort. They had odd lifts competition back in those days. Powerlifting was still not
as popular
or even started. And Doug Hepburn managed to outlift him by 10 pounds. He did 440 pounds, which is 200 kilos. But it was with poor form. He bounced it off his chest. And after Doug finished the lift, Marvin Eder, as a true sportsman, congratulated him in the mini competition between themselves. And he said to Doug, "Hey man, that was a good lift, but I believe you shaved off 2 inches of your chest with that bounce." Because Marvin Eder was benching with a strict form.
So that's a big difference.
Yeah, but it was also a big bodyweight difference. I believe Doug Hepburn at that meeting was 70 or 80 pounds heavier than Marvin Eder.
So that's why, for comparison of lifts today, we only count meat lifts, because there's when you do it in a gym, everyone has different weights. Some weights are off. You can cheat in training.
Yeah, you can cheat. That's true, and most of the lifters aren't true to themselves. They believe that they've hit a certain number, but either the squat was too high, the bench was cheated with poor form, their ass going off the bench, the deadlift was hitched, and stuff like that. That's why it's best to, if you really like the power lifts, to go to a meet and make them official.
Official lifts compare the best.
Yeah. Next, we can talk about what the bench press represents from a hypertrophy and physique perspective. What are the primary muscles used? Maybe you could tell us something about that.
Okay, so the bench press was popularized from the Reg Park era and onwards, and it became the main muscle. Like back then the bodybuilders were focused on the chest, and in the earlier time it was more like wide shoulders, who had the widest shoulders and the shape and the roundness. And basically they weren't doing bench presses. It was more natural to do pressing. So the bench press was later popularized after Reg Park and Steve Reeves as well. And then later, when the Mr. Olympia started, that was the norm was a V-shaped body, as wide as possible upstairs with the smallest waist.
Yeah, and large colossal chest, just like Sergio Oliva and Arnold Schwarzenegger had.
Yes, Arnold, one of the biggest chests.
Even by today's standard, his chest and arms were.
Chest and arms, he can stand with anyone.
Yeah, those were
yes, even at today's
era.
Even at today's era.
Yeah,
And
because having over 20-inch arms, lean, and I don't know how big chest, but it was colossal.
Yes, I believe it was 54 inches in measurement. I don't know how
that's
correct
insane.
is that. Yes.
And he had 34 or 36-inch waist, which is
34.
insane.
Yes, he had, by that time standards, he had not a big waist but wide. That was considered. He was considered to have wide waist. That's why he did that side twist poses to.
With his hips, yeah.
Yes, with his hips.
But his massive chest helped a lot.
And also his vacuum and then.
Yeah, that helped a lot to create that V shape from the front. From the back, he didn't have any issues because his back was also big by those standards.
Yeah, I believe the most complete he was in 74.
Yeah.
Before he retired the first time.
No, he retired in 75, but I believe also he reached his prime in muscle shape and size in 74. Maybe in 75 he was more ripped, but he lost a lot of leg size.
So that's what he retired in 74, but because that's when he has reached his peak in his mind, and then they wanted to make pumping iron, and they called him. They told him, and he wasn't interested at the beginning, and they told him, okay, this will popularize the sport and everything, but it won't work if you're not in it. So he started doing movies at the time. He lost some weight. He did Stay Hungry. He lost a bunch of weight. He was like 200 pounds.
Yeah, he was 200 pounds for Stay Hungry.
Yes. So he prepared for like 2 months only for the Mr. Olympia 1975, and he was much lighter than usual. He was like 235 to 240 pounds.
No, I believe he was even 225.
In 70, yes, in his peak in 74.
In 74, I believe he was between 235, 240.
Yes.
Which is insane for that area.
Yes, and in 75 he was like 225, 220 maybe.
Yeah.
He didn't.
But he still won it.
Yes, he was ripped, but his legs were a bit undersized.
Yeah, but
his chest was even in the 80s when he was really retired for 5 years. When he came back, he dominated everyone with chest and arms. I know a lot of people talk shit about his 1980s, but really, who beat him?
In the 1980 Mr. Olympia?
Yes.
He was still one of the most massive bodybuilders on the stage, even though he was under his peak weight.
Yes, I believe he didn't weigh even 100 kilos in the 1980s. I don't know. He was.
I believe his official weight was somewhere around that, but he was still big.
Yes.
For the 1980 Mr. Olympia. And imagine what could he have done if he didn't retire in 75.
Yes, he was training for Conan the Barbarian, and
yeah,
he was looking at the mirror one day. He said, "Yeah. I need to compete again." People were starting rumors like, "Is he coming back? Is he coming back?" And he said, "Why not?" And then he competed. That's the most controversial win.
Yeah, but he was also at his best conditioning at that Olympia. He was even better conditioned than 75. If you compare the photos, he was undersized compared to 75 or 74, but his conditioning was way better. Yeah. Maybe because of the drugs, maybe because he learned something new, how to diet better, how to, I don't know, lose more water.
Yes. So he had also, the golden era guys were using a lot of incline bench pressing instead of just the flat, and the flat was done with very wide grip.
They wanted to emphasize the chest a lot.
So
From those times, I believe that from then on, the chest became a staple body part in bodybuilding. Nowadays, if you see a bodybuilder with weak chest, he won't make it far.
and they usually have big triceps and shoulders.
Yeah.
So that comes down to the technique of benching.
Yeah.
You see people bench with narrow grip, or their shoulders are not tucked back, so they're using a lot of their shoulders and triceps.
From a hypertrophy aspect, that's good. Close grip benching allows you using a bigger range of motion, which will load the triceps more
Yes.
because of the grip width, but also the chest, because you will have to move the bar a longer path in a way. So yeah, that's from a hypertrophy aspect, the bench press is really important, and a lot of bodybuilders use it nowadays. And not only bodybuilders, but people that want to build a good physique.
Yeah, when we are at the bench press and the chest muscle, we need at least to mention one of the greatest chests and the incline portion. The
incline part of the chest,
Yes, it's Franco Columbo, who passed away this year.
the upper part
yes.
incline is angle. The upper part of the pecs.
He was also very strong for a 80 kilo guy. He was lifting like, I believe, over 500 pounds.
On the bench press, yeah, he was really strong. He was the training partner of Arnold,
Yes.
and he was a lot stronger than Arnold, even though he was much lighter. But that was due to his leverages, because he was short. He had short arms, legs, stuff like that. But also because he trained in a more powerlifting style.
Yes, I believe Arnold had also very strong bench, even though he's not considered as a...
Yeah.
He did also powerlifting back in the day.
Yeah.
I believe his bench is close to 450 or 480, I'm not sure.
Something like that, which for a bodybuilder
Yes,
is great.
in an interview he said that he benched 505 I believe. And it might be off-season.
He was also a great deadlifter.
Yeah, over 700.
Yeah, even at an early age. So he had a lot of strength potential. Remember that. Strength is important for hypertrophy,
Yeah.
especially as a natural lifter.
Not a great squatter though, with his long femurs.
Yeah, not a great squatter, but he eventually became a good squatter. He embraced the squat because he knew that it would improve his squats, and improved on it. So the current bench press world record was set in 2019 by Julius Maddox. The lift is 742.9 pounds, which is exactly 337 kilos, which is something insane when you compare it, let's say, to Doug Hepburn or Reg Park, which was 500 pounds.
Yes, Julius Maddox is... I believe he'll break his own record
Again,
if he stays healthy. He's a lot heavier than the previous guys we've mentioned, but he has the potential. The way he is lifting these weights,
he's very explosive.
And
He has a large, colossal upper body, unbelievably large. Large arms, large chest, large back, large everything. His torso is immense, and not only that, not only the fact that his leverages are great, but he also has, I believe, great mindset when it comes to lifting those colossal weights, because not everybody can handle it mentally.
yes, there are people like, for example, the previous bench press record holder, Kirill Sarichev. He's a guy that had a record for 335 kilos, and for example, he doesn't train that heavy as Julius Maddox. I've watched him. He only I believe in an interview he also said that he hadn't gone heavier than 300 kilos or even 280
in training.
When he prepared. And he also he lifts like 200, 220 with perfect street form for reps, like it's nothing for him. So
and he doesn't grind.
Yes, he never grinds.
I have never seen Kirill grind on a bench press.
I haven't seen him miss a lift.
Yeah, also maybe that's important from a strength perspective. Maybe we will discuss that in another episode. Is it okay to grind often? How often? Is it okay to stay below your maximum capabilities for that day or meet or something like that, training phase?
But also I believe that Sarichev did not use his max potential. He did not reach his maximum. He could done more than 335. He beat the previous record that was by Eric Spoto
by 10 kilos.
By 10 kilos. So he beat the previous record by Eric Spoto. I believe that record was like 10 years. It wasn't broken or Spoto broke
the record of Scott Mendelson. That was nearly a decade.
Yes, that was nearly a decade. I've mistaken. But no one was coming close to that bench, so he beat the record by 10 kilos. And
he did it with ease.
So
it looked so easy. When Spoto did the record, it looked so hard. He grinded it. It was really heavy. You could tell it. But when Sarichev did it,
it looked like a second attempt, or even maybe an opener. I would consider.
Yeah. Most of the people were like, "Hey, this guy could add 10 kilos to this lift," and he did it at a very young age.
Yes, that was like 4 or 5 years ago. He's like 30 years now.
He was 25, something like that, when he set the record. So imagine what the record could have been if he focused on it for several more years, maybe 15, 20 kilos more than that.
Yes, I believe he has the potential.
Yeah.
He has the potential, but also maybe he chose the longevity road,
the healthier way, because he is really heavy even nowadays, but he was super heavy back then when he said that.
And also it's important to say that Kirill is also competes in all 3 disciplines. I know he benched this at the bench only meet, but he also has like 400 kilo deadlift.
Yeah.
His squat is also like 370, I believe.
Close to 400 or 880 pounds.
Yes. So he's
overall strong.
Yes. He's strong in everything. He also had strict curls and
he does pull-ups he did pull-ups at something like 400 pounds body weight, which is insane in my opinion. Insane, really insane.
But he's a lot bigger than records and everything. He has his own federation now in
WRPF.
Yes, WRPF,
which is super popular, especially in the Eastern Bloc.
The Eastern Bloc, yes. We've also, that's the organization that we've competed
in 2019. Yeah.
In 2019, it was amazing experience.
Yeah, great organization.
Yeah, it was
great equipment.
It was a pity that
they stopped
doing it, but
in the Balkans. Yeah.
Yes, is what it is.
Yeah, as Jovan mentioned, Spoto was the record holder before Kirill Sarichev, and he beat the record of Scott Mendelson by only 1 pound.
That's like 400 grams.
454 grams, yeah. Scott Mendelson did 715, and Spoto beat that record after nearly a decade by only 1 pound. And he was struggling for it. A lot of people thought that when he benched 700, I believe, for the first time, he benched it with such ease because he's super explosive from his chest, but at his maximum, he struggles with the lockout.
Yes, he was shaking a lot.
Yeah, he was struggling with his lockout, which is only a thing that occurs with top level benchers. A regular gym goer will almost never struggle at the top of the bench press. He will most likely fail at the bottom or at the mid-range of the bench press, because most of the time your chest will fail while doing a bench press.
So if you set up properly, if you use...
Yeah, so that speaks a lot about Scott Mendelson, because he was not only a great raw bencher, he was also a great equipped bench presser.
Yes, he was benching like over 1,000 pounds
with equipment, yeah. Just a small introduction into equipped bench pressing. Equipped bench pressing evolved, especially in the 90s, when they started using single-ply shirts, and multiply shirts, and it became really popular because the weights jumped up dramatically. And Scott Mendelson was one of the premier equipped bench pressers, but he also had a lot of raw bench pressing power. Ryan Kennelly was also one of the best equipped bench pressers that had super impressive raw bench press as well.
But he was competing in squats and deadlifts as well, yeah?
Ryan Kennelly?
Yeah, no.
I believe only in the bench press, just like Scott Mendelson. Scott Mendelson competed mainly in the bench press, but he mentioned in one interview done many years ago that he also had something like 1,000 pound squat in wraps and single ply suit, which was impressive at the time. Not a lot of 1,000 pound squats like nowadays.
Yeah. He had an ankle injury, I believe.
So correct. So we mentioned those are the all-time bench press records in the super heavyweight category. Some of the long-standing records or impressive lighter class bench pressers that we can mention are Rick Well and Mike McDonald. Rick did his best bench press in the 181 category in 86, and he lifted 556 pounds. That is over 250 kilos, done at a body weight of 82.5 kilos, which is amazing, especially considering it was done in a full meet. And Mike McDonald
that's brutal
power, unbelievable. He had leverages amazing. He was also an amazing athlete in all of the...
Also, one thing to notice, back in the day, they didn't arch as much as nowadays.
Yes.
I think, back in the day it was like you lie on the bench, you take wide grip, you bench with the pause, and that's it.
You do a small arch.
Yes, small arch, but to protect your shoulders and everything.
But press with your chest primarily.
Nowadays I see arching and 2-inch range of motion. Yeah,
especially in the lighter classes where they can be more flexible because they have less muscle mass.
Yes. 70, 80, 90 kilos.
Maybe in even lighter classes, and they shorten their range of motion. As you said, it's like 3 inches benching. So not to take away anything from those guys, it's still super impressive, but I believe that there should be certain standards on how much you arch, but it's hard to measure that and to judge that. Another...
They should switch it with the strict press.
The bench press, that would make a chaos again. They would cheat a lot. You know how competitive athletes are.
It's always the same.
Another athlete that I would like to mention is Mike McDonald. For those of you that have seen those cambered bars in the gym, especially in powerlifting gyms or strength gyms, Mike McDonald is the pioneer of those bars. He was a tremendous bench presser. He competed in several weight classes, and one of the longest standing records from 1979 in the 220 pound class in a full meet, he benched 582 pounds in a full meet. I believe that record still stands today, if I'm not mistaken. and that is super impressive. He focused a lot of benching through a greater range of motion, not something that was that is the opposite of what equipped powerlifters did, because they had support from the bench shot at the bottom. They did a lot of board pressing where they trained their triceps a lot.
So these camber bars are like deficit bench press.
Yes, deficit bench press. That's a nice name for that variation.
You have more stretch on the chest.
Yeah, just like when you do it with dumbbells. He pioneered that and did a special bar, cambered bar, that allowed him to use greater range of motion. So those are several impressive lighter class benchers. Other great bench pressers from the past that we could mention that held several all-time bench press records at the time. Now some of them still have records even to this day. For example, Ted Arcidi was a great bench presser and also a wrestler at the time. He still holds the records in the, I believe, 275 and maybe in the 275 category, with over 300 kilos lifted, over 660 pounds lifted. Super impressive, jacked physique, colossal chest, shoulders, arms, because if you really have that strong of a bench press, I don't see how you won't have that big of muscles, because those are the primary muscles used. Chest, then you go triceps, shoulders, so on.
Unlike the other lifts, the bench is the lift that requires bigger muscles to improve. Some people can improve. Most of the people can improve squats and deadlifts with the same body weight and the same composition, and they might look like.
I believe the squat is also body weight dependent, but the deadlift definitely can be improved a lot.
Yes, but
even if you don't have body weight,
Yes, I've seen people improve their quads a little bit, but their squat like 100 kilos. But on the bench press, like there's no big bench presser without big arms, chest, and everything.
True, I agree on that.
And all of the top guys, when they give advice on increasing your bench press, they all say like do more upper body, because the bench, even though it involves the chest primarily, the triceps and the shoulders, it's also a lot of upper back and the arms.
You need a lot of upper back to be stable on the bench.
Yes, upper back to be stable, and even the biceps and the brachialis, because they give you a lot of stability and cushion when you lower the weight. So that helps a lot.
Strong grip also helps a lot, because
the grip, squeezing the bar as hard as possible,
because you contract your muscles harder and you create a better mind-muscle connection.
And the lats as well. The bigger your lats and your triceps are, the better start you will have. After
cushioning,
yes.
As you mentioned. Several other lifters that we would like to mention, not that there aren't more impressive lifters, but these are lifters that were the benchmark at some point in the strength history. We can mention Bill Kazmaier, the first human to ever lift 300 kilos officially in a powerlifting meet, and it was super impressive because it looked easy. He was also a world's strongest man champion.
Yeah, he was
jacked and really insane human being. He was known for his super intensity.
One of the most intense people. He was
Other guy.
And also to notice that he was also a wrestler. So back in the day, they were. Even today, there's no money in. Okay, now you can, if you're a world champion and everything, you can get sponsors and.
Yeah, in powerlifting.
But back in the day, I believe in powerlifting,
they were doing it for free, basically.
Yes, that was like for fun and like we are doing now.
Yeah.
And strongmen, I believe they weren't getting any cash money a lot.
Yeah, back in those days.
It was the beginning. Like strongman started in like 77 or what was the first World's Strongest Man?
I believe in 77, yeah.
When they were bending bars and
Yeah, a lot of bodybuilders competed back in those days, like Franco Columbo, Lou Ferrigno, who was also a strong bodybuilder. And but Bill Kazmaier, when he started, it was evident that he would dominate the World's Strongest Man competition. He was, I don't know if you know this fact, he wasn't allowed to compete after he won it 3 times in a row.
yes, they didn't invite him.
Yeah.
Because he was basically too strong. How will you organize a World's Strongest Man competition and you won't invite the strongest man in the world right then? And then somebody else wins and you pronounce that guy the World's Strongest Man.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's hilarious. But yeah, that was basically his story. Later on, he returned to competing in World's Strongest Man, but he was facing a lot of fierce competitors like John Paul Sigmarsson, and he was out of his peak strength. Next big bencher that I want to mention, who had kind of a sad life story, is Big Jim Williams, who I believe was unofficially the first guy who benched 700 pounds. He was really a large dude. I believe he ended up in prison several times, and that affected his training. Another lifter, the first guy that benched 600 pounds, that was Pat Casey, also an impressive upper body. He set the benchmark. He opened the gateway for other lifters to lift more than 600 pounds. Another guy who was kind of a superstar in the 70s with not only his strength but also his physique, especially
one of my favorite.
Yeah, Doug Young. He had an amazing upper body physique, and he was one of the most jacked powerlifters ever.
His neck was benching 315.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, and from the West Side guys, James Blakely, who was
the inventor of the JM press.
The JM press.
He was named after him.
Yeah. For several years, he was the face of the West Side barbell because he was so successful. He was benching big weights, way over 600 pounds, and he was competing at several weight categories. As you mentioned, he is also an exercise inventor. The JM press is named after him, obviously, and it is a tricep variation that mimics the tricep involvement in the bench press. That's why we are mentioning him. It's a good exercise, not something that a beginner should do, but for someone that's intermediate to an advanced level, they should consider it doing it because it emphasizes the triceps a lot, which are important in the bench press.
I'm not a fan.
Yeah, Johan is not a fan. I haven't done it a lot as well because it's for me it's hard on the elbows.
Skull crushers, JM presses, all of that stuff is
hard on the elbows.
Yes, I believe there are a lot of other exercises that you can benefit more and without side effects, like you can do weighted dips, you can do close grip paused benching, you can there are a lot more overload and less injuries and aches and pains and strains and all that.
But still, nonetheless, the JM press is really popular in the powerlifting circles, and we can't argue with the results.
Yes.
A lot of good benchers swear by it. So, I believe we covered a lot about bench pressing in general. We did talk about a lot of great bench pressers in the strength history.
Yes, we have covered 50 minutes. This is enough.
Enough for you. Johan has something to say.
Yes, that's what. If you like to go on long shits like us, this is around the time, like 50 minutes, so you don't get bored. You can listen to
this podcast. And probably this episode wasn't as big of a shit as the shit that you took.
Yeah. Yes.
So that's basically it.
No more boring.
Yeah.
Shits.
Yeah. We will wrap up this episode, and till next time, stay strong, guys.
Yes. So till next time.
See ya.
Balkan.
Show.